me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names. 2018 NFL Draft. We're talking cornerbacks, and this next guy in a draft class full of smaller, diminutive corners is a guy that's going to stand out because he's one of the few long, rangy corners in this draft. He reminds me a ton of another cornerback that was selected in the same round, and I think he's going to get selected in this draft. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on who I think he's comped to, where I think he'll land, and what his game consists of. But make no mistake about it, I've seen this guy show up in mocks in the first round. It's not going to happen. He's not going to go in the first round of this draft. I'll tell you why a little bit later on, but make no mistake about it. There's a certain talent and skill set that he brings to the table that gives him an opportunity to hear his name called, most likely early in day number 2 of the 2018 NFL Draft. I'm talking about Auburn cornerback Carlton Davis. Let's talk about what he brings to the table and why he is one of the few long corners that can give you some value in the 2018 NFL Draft. We'll start with his pros. So first, we start off with his measurables. 6'1", 206 pounds is what Carlton Davis stands at, and he looks the part of a 6'1", 206-pound corner. Very imposing, guy that wants to come in your face, delete the airspace, wants to be physical with you at the line of scrimmage, wants to molest you, and really wants to make you uncomfortable. And I love that about him, and I think that's going to be his calling card at the next level, is his ability to come up, play press, man-to-man coverage, and really disrupt the timing of a play. Will he always win in those situations? No. But will he make it tough on a quarterback to stay with the receiver if he's pressing him, jamming him, disrupting the timing of a route? Sure he will. So we'll see what happens there, but his measurables gives him an opportunity to do exactly that, disrupt the timing of a route early on, as he's long at 6'1" with some arms to give him an opportunity to extend and get into the body of a receiver. 4'5", 340 is his speed. At the combine, he turned around, ran it again at his pro day, ran a 4.53, so he bettered that time just a tad bit. But what you see is what you get with Carlton Davis. He's a 4'5" guy, right in that range, 4.52, 4.53, somewhere in there. We've seen this guy get beat badly, okay? The first play that comes to mind, first guy running right by him that comes to mind is the LSU wide receiver, DJ Chark. I couldn't think of his name for a second. DJ Chark ran right by him, and like he was standing still. And that's something that you see on tape with Carlton Davis. He'll win some, he'll lose some. One thing he never loses, though, is his confidence. He's still going to come in your face and challenge you at the line of scrimmage, whether you just beat him for an 80-yard touchdown or he was able to get in your hip pocket and break up a slant. He doesn't care. He's still going to be aggressive. And I love that. You know, as a corner, you've got to have selective memory. You've got to be able to erase what's ever happened, whether it's a good play or a bad play. You've got to be able to move on to the next. And Carlton Davis does a really good job of doing that. But I said all of that to say this. He's a 4'5" guy. He's got athleticism. He's got anticipation and awareness. Doesn't necessarily have the acceleration to make up, though, if you beat him off the line of scrimmage, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So the speed is what it is, okay? He's not going to show up and run a 4.45. That's not what Carlton Davis is doing. He's a 4'5" guy, and with that length, that should be more than enough. But again, I'll explain why it's not always enough a little bit later on. But he's aware. He's got anticipation. He sees things when it's developing. Does a really good job of making some plays when they're there to be made. There's some situations where he doesn't do some things that I think he should be doing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But in zone coverage, very aware. Gets a pick against Missouri where he's in zone coverage. Ball gets tipped twice, and it caroms off the receiver's hand on a slant. Then there's a defensive back behind that receiver, and it caroms off his hands. And look what I just found. You know, I'm in zone. I'm aware. I see what's going on. And Carlton Davis comes down with the pick. And so he's able to be aware, see what's going on, and make plays. He anticipates things well, slants and things that are underneath. He does a really good job. I think underneath, Look, I can tell you this right now. If this guy doesn't pan out as a corner, he'll make one hell of a safety, because I think as an underneath defender, this guy's outstanding. And so he anticipates routes well, breaks on them underneath. He's very stingy underneath. It's when he goes vertically, when guys test his long distance speed, that's when he struggles. But when you're talking underneath, when you're talking that shallow cross, when you're talking about the slant, when you're talking about a deep out or out breaking route, or you're talking about an in breaking route on an over route, or you're talking about a strike route or something like that, this guy's all over those types of routes. It's the ones, the deep post, the 9 route, that backside bang that you're like, oh, where's Carlton Davis at? Why are you 3 steps behind the receiver? That's when he gets himself into trouble. But he's aware, he anticipates things, especially underneath. I like that about him. Ball skills, he's got 4 career interceptions. Could he have better ball skills? Sure. There's a reason why he didn't have more interceptions. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But tackling and willingness to tackle, which is another reason why I think if corner doesn't work for this guy, he's got a future in the league. And maybe, you know what he reminds me of? And I'm not comping him to this guy, but it's starting to come to me that he reminds me a lot of Malcolm Jenkins. When he came out of Ohio State, he was a cornerback. He wanted to play corner initially, and he ended up having to make that switch once he got to the league because he wasn't fast enough, but he was physical enough. But he still had cornerback tendencies and was able to make that transition to safety and be a really versatile safety. I see the same thing in Carlton Davis. If he doesn't pan out as a safety, as a corner, I think there is a future for him in this league as a safety. We'll see what happens with him, but nonetheless, he tackles his ass off. I mean, he tackles like a safety. He's physical. He's looking to come up, lay the lumber, get you down, form tackles, give you a shoulder, be physical, all the while just making sure he gets you down if need be. There's a lot to like about him in that sense. This guy is a very good and willing tackler and very physical while doing it. I really like what he does there. To me, by far and away the best tackling corner that I've had a chance to lay eyes on in this particular draft. Don't know if you'll find anybody better at getting guys on the ground and doing it in a physical manner than Carlton Davis in this draft. Man coverage, zone coverage, I think he does a good job of both. He's not great at either one, but I think he's solid enough that they don't hinder him as a player to the point where these are negatives and knocks on him. So could he be better in both elements and aspects? Sure he could, but he's solid enough to get the job done. And I talked about the comp for him and who I think he is. To me, he's a splitting image of a guy that had the same measurables, same size, ran around the same speed last year in Quincy Wilson, the cornerback out of Florida. Same SEC conference, same build, same speed, same measurables, looks the same. They do the same thing. Quincy Wilson, much better in man pressing than in anything else. Same thing here with Carlton Davis, another long press corner that wants to come up and disrupt you at the line of scrimmage. To me, he's a splitting image of Quincy Wilson. Wilson didn't get the opportunity in Indianapolis to play a bunch. He's going to get a ton of opportunities, I think, under new management to play this year, however. And so I'm anxious to see how Quincy Wilson does in the league. And I think Carlton Davis looks a lot like Quincy Wilson from last year. Let's go to the cons, however, of Carlton Davis and what he needs to work on to excel at the next level. Acceleration, it is what it is. This is a guy that if you beat him off the line of scrimmage cleanly and you've got speed and you can accelerate and run, you're going to run away from Carlton Davis. I talked about DJ Chark doing the same thing. Calvin Ridley is another guy that I saw separate away from Carlton Davis. It wasn't something that was unique. This was an occurrence that if you can run away from Carlton Davis. That's the knock on him is he doesn't have makeup speed. You know, he can stay with you in phase, underneath and intermediate, but if you run deep and you have speed, if he's not able to put his hands on you and kind of grab and tug and keep you nearby, you can run away from this guy. We've seen it done on numerous occasions throughout his career. Agility and change of direction. It's good. It's not great. Again, I like him underneath. I think he's got more than enough agility and change of direction underneath. It's when you start getting a little bit further away from the line of scrimmage, a guy wants to run 20 or 16 back to 14. That's tough to ask this guy to stop, sink his hips, change directions, and plant and come back to the football. It's those types of timing routes where he has trouble changing direction. If a guy beats him off the line of scrimmage and is able to run and make Carlton Davis open up, and then a guy just sinks his hips and is able to stop and run on a dime right across, that's not what Carlton Davis is built to do. So I think in that regard he struggles a little bit, but again, I think he does a good job underneath. So we'll see what happens there. He's not an LLCer. That really is my biggest pet peeve with cornerbacks is, to me, I'm not gonna lie to you, he looks like a safety. We'll see what happens with him. Again, in the right defense, you put him in Seattle where he's strictly playing cover 3, and I think Carlton Davis will be just fine. He excels at man-to-man, but how can you excel at something when you also get beat in that same defense quite often? I think he's a guy that he's long. He has some good skills and qualities about him. You put him in the right defense, you accentuate his strengths, minimize his weaknesses. You may be able to get some really good play out of Carlton Davis. Just thinks it matters where he lands and what you're asking him to do. But he doesn't look for the football. He doesn't look back. I can give you a great example. They're playing Texas A&M. They're really giving it to Texas A&M. Late in this ball game, Texas A&M down by about 2 scores. Game's essentially in the waning moments. Don't give them. It's 4th down. Quarterback just throws it up for grabs. There's nothing there. Carlton Davis does not look for the football. Runs smack dab into the receiver who has no chance of catching it. And they throw a PI on him, and it extends the game, extends the drive, and gives Texas A&M a chance to score what amounts to a meaningless touchdown. But still, the game would have been over if you didn't get that PI. But you got the PI because you didn't look for the football. If you would have looked, you would have seen it poorly underthrown. You might have even had a chance to pick it off. But instead, you don't look back. You run smack dab into the receiver, and you pick up a senseless pass interference penalty. And that's, in a nutshell, what happens when you don't look for the football. When you don't look, you don't locate. You're just looking to contest. You can run into those types of problems. He's one of those guys that generally doesn't look back for the football, and so he can run into those problems. Is he a blitzer? I didn't see it on tape. So, and again, I don't want to harp on it. He's not a blitzer. I don't foresee him playing anybody's slot anyway, unless he makes the transition to safety and then they ask him to drop over the slot. So in the meantime, I don't think it's a big deal. And versatility. He's not a punt returner. He's not playing in the slot right now. All he is a boundary corner with some limitations on speed. So even though I think he loves to come up and play press, if he doesn't get a good jam off, he can get beat and beat badly off the line of scrimmage. So I think there are limitations there as well. So we'll see about Carlton Davis. I've got my reservations about him, of what he is. I think he could ultimately end up being a safety like a Malcolm Jenkins, and it might be the best move for him. We'll see. Again, just depends on where he lands, who drafts him, what they ask him to do. You put him in the right defense. You put him in a Tampa 2, and you tell him, hey, you playing cover 2, and you get to keep your eyes on the quarterback. You get to be physical at the line of scrimmage. He may be great in that system. You ask him to play cover 3, where he's able to press and bail and just keep the guy in front of him, play the deep, just have the deepest, be the deeper of the deepest, and just keep guys in front of him. He may be good at that. He may excel at that in a defense where you're not actually doing anything but play cover 3. We'll see. I don't really know what the future holds for Carlton Davis. He's not one of my favorites in this draft. I can tell you that much because of some of the limitations. But he's one of the few guys that offers you some size and length in this draft at the cornerback position. So that's something to keep in mind as well. We'll see what happens. But one thing's for sure, Carlton Davis is an intriguing prospect. We'll see where he lands. I'm your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on this breakdown. We're going to switch gears and go to some edge rushers. But before we do that, if you want to find out where Carlton Davis ranks among the rest of these corners, check out the site LouieTNetwork.net for all of the rankings of the corners and all the other positions I've had a chance to take a look at thus far as we head into the 2018 NFL Draft. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you share this video. Make sure you subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. There's podcasts. There's videos like this. There's the website. There's a bunch of content for you to enjoy and consume. So check me out, subscribe, and share this with everyone you know. Remember, we're changing the game over here. Period. I'm your man, Louie T. Got plenty more where this came from. Don't you go anywhere. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.